Hello, and thank you for watching the replay. It's Angel with Harvard and Hardship, where the path to academic excellence should not be a secret. Tonight, let's talk about diversity drops, what I call the diversity drop. But before we get started, if you need one-on-one help with your college, law school, or graduate school application, head over to harvardandhardshipllc.com. Check out the services there. Also, be sure to check out the bookstore. I will drop the link in the description if I haven't done so already. There you can purchase Harvard and Hardship, a beginner's guide to college and law school. This is like an anecdotal guide, tells all the stories of how I got to Harvard Law and to help you get through college and law school. And check out the writing guide. So the first one was so this one is like story based. This one is a writing guide. This is not an admissions writing guide. This is about how to write the analytical papers once you're in college or university or law school. So on to tonight's topic, what I call the diversity drop. So essentially, a diversity drop is the purpose of a diversity drop is just to give a subtle hint at your diversity in the personal statement. Some schools do accept diversity statements and some don't. So if it does or it doesn't, you can do what I call a diversity drop. And again, it's just a subtle hint at your social, cultural, economic, whatever ability, background. And what you can do, if you do want to do a diversity statement, you can do a diversity drop in the personal statement and then pick it back up in the diversity statement and expound more on that diversity. Or if you're not going to do a diversity statement, you can do a diversity drop in the personal statement, just so you can make sure that you let them know that I have XYZ background or ABC experience. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty of how to do this. So first off, you can do what I call, I have names for everything, the diversity drive-by. So essentially, a diversity drive-by is while you're telling your story, you just happen to mention, you happen to insert a phrase that subtly hints at, it subtly points to whatever your diversity is. So I jotted down like a few sentences taken from actual personal statements. The first couple of phrases are from my personal statement. So I posted a video with my personal statement if you want to go back and watch and read it in context. But some of the diversity drive-bys that I did in my personal statement, one said, I was teaching students with whom I identify socially and economically, or something to that effect. So it's like, wait, she's teaching students who she identifies with socioeconomically. She's doing Teach for America because that was the context of that statement. Oh, she's trying to say she's Black or Latino and poor because that's the demographic that Teach for America serves. So you see how that was kind of like a quick drive-by in the midst of a 2-page document. Another one that I did, I said in my personal statement, with a degree and professional job under my belt, I was the bright and shining star of my family or something like that. And so it's like having a degree and being a teacher is like a big deal for you. Oh, you must come from like a very low income background where that's not the norm. But see how that's different from just saying, I am a low income African American woman. Boring. Another phrase, in my tribe. That's a diversity drive-by because it's like, who uses the word tribe? I mean, I guess kind of colloquially, it's kind of like used now, like, oh, this is my crew, this is my tribe. But in the personal statement that I'm talking about, that's not how it was used. It was like literally in my tribe. And so it's like, oh, they're Native American or Native, Native American doesn't have to be from a U.S. Native American on this continent, but Native American anywhere. If you say a tribe, it's like, oh, they're Native American. But see how that's so much more subtle and just a more effective technique at storytelling as opposed to saying, I am a Native American. One more example of a diversity drive-by in my village. So that's one that I didn't use, but clients have used. In my village, XYZ happened. It's like, okay, so you must be an international student because people in the US don't really say in my village. Like, so are you from like the Middle East somewhere, or maybe a country in Africa where people still live in villages, or even in South America, but that's not typically what someone from the US would say. So that's what I call a diversity drive-by. Just a quick phrase that you throw in while you're telling your story to subconsciously almost let them know that, this is my background. You could also, yes, incorporate foreign words or phrases. Now, don't do this if it doesn't fit. Matter of fact, any of these techniques, this fits with certain personal statements. That's why I do so many different videos. You have to take what you can use and throw out what you can't. So please don't just go in putting all these foreign words, especially if it has nothing to do with your story, and definitely if it has nothing to do with your background. But if it's applicable to your story and your background, include the foreign word or phrase. So sometimes, I'm working on a personal statement and they're like, Angel, they said this, but they said it in Spanish, or they said it in Hindi, or whatever, in Mandarin, or whatever language. And I'm like, well, put it in that language, or put that, if it's a foreign word, I can't think of one now. Like, my favorite food is blah, blah, blah. I tell them, they're like, oh, it translates as little cake, but I'm like, no, use the foreign word, and then in parentheses write what the English equivalent is. Write a parenthetical phrase explaining what it is, because it's like communicating that. It's communicating your diversity. So don't be afraid to use that foreign word or phrase if it makes sense to do it. Like, also don't stretch and do it. The final way that you can do a diversity drop is cultural names. This one's really good. So, like, typically, I am not a proponent of using stereotypes, because even if most XYZ group, even if most people in this group do XYZ, there's going to be one person in that cultural group that does not do that. And that one thing alone makes that stereotype untrue. However, with cultural names and the fact that in a personal statement, you're trying to get across information very quickly, because sometimes you only have 2 pages to write it. Or if you have 3 pages, that's good, but it's still not a lot of time. Sometimes you need to depend on stereotypes and cliches. Cliches is another live for another day. But sometimes you need to depend on like stereotypes or something that can get across the message really quickly. So for instance, if I or a client doesn't want to say like in India, it was an Indian man, I'll say, well, use the name Patel, because that is a cultural name. Or for instance, the name Jamal tends to be a Black or North African name. Or even like Mr. Sanchez, Latino name, So that's another way to do a diversity drop, is to use a cultural name in your story if it fits and if it's true to your story. Again, please don't make up things. That's another way, is to use those cultural names to let the admissions reader know or clue them in on your diversity. So that's pretty much all I want to say tonight. Make sure that if you need one-on-one help with your college, law school, or graduate school application, personal statements, letters of recommendation, diversity statements, resumes, whatever, head over to Harvard and Hardship, LLC.com. And that's all I have to say. Make sure you check out the books on my bookstore. Right now, I will take some questions. If there's any questions tonight. Thank you, Rachel. Richard said, wow, that's a good tip. Thank you. I'll stay on for like a minute. It's been quiet lately, but if there's questions, I'll take some questions. Otherwise, happy writing, folks. Questions. Any more questions? Any more questions? Any questions about the personal statement or diversity statement? My time at Harvard Law school in general. How many diversity drive-bys? It totally depends on your story. In my personal statement, when I think back to mine, I did 3. But here's the thing, I didn't do a diversity statement. So that's why I had so many like subtle hints at my diversity. And I think people make the mistake of saying like, I have to submit a diversity statement, or people may have even assumed that I submitted a diversity statement to get in law school because I'm Black and a woman. I didn't. I just did diversity drive-bys. And it's a drive-by because it was not the main focus of my diversity statement. The main focus was my failure, like putting my failure into context so that I could tell my own story and tell the admissions reader what happened. That was the purpose. That was the purpose of the personal statement. It was diversity drive-bys because that was kind of like the underlying layer of the story. So I think I did, and I think back to it, I think I did like 3. But it just depends on your story. Some clients do 1. It was just a quick, being the first person in my family to go to college, and they tell the rest of their story. And then, even though they only did 1 drive-by, we pick it back up in diversity statement and dedicate their entire diversity statement to being a first-generation college student. So I hate to say the answer is it depends. Do you recommend not to overdo it? Yeah, but it depends. Like, what does overdoing it mean? Like I said, I had 3 diversity jobs. I see like writing these things as like kind of like sewing or like knitting or quilting or like basket weaving. So like I didn't do them back to back to back. Like there was maybe one at the top of the personal statement, another one like in the middle of the personal statement, and then maybe one at the very end. It's just how you do it. So no, I can't give you a hard line like only do 2 diversity drops per personal statement. No, some papers, and not even just the 1 personal statement, but some application packages, it makes sense to only have 1 diversity drop. And if you keep dropping diversity, it's just like, stop. Like it's clear that you're trying to hint at your diversity. Drop it once and then pick it back up in the diversity statement. But some stories like mine, I didn't do a diversity statement in my package. Some packages like mine, application packages like mine, I didn't do a diversity statement. So it was okay for me to do multiple diversity drops. As a Black woman at Harvard Law, how many of your classmates were Black, and did you have any Black faculty? So at Harvard Law, so each entering class is divided into sections. So there were, I think, 8 sections, section 1, section 2. I think there were 8 sections, like about 70, maybe 80 people per section. I would say like maybe there were like between 8 and 10 Black people per section. Black faculty, they were there. I don't want to sit and start counting because I know I'll leave someone out. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out though. Off the top of my head, 7. So yes, there was representation. So I think that's all the questions for tonight. Make sure to join me next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll be taking more questions. I don't know what I'm going to talk about then, but I'll be here. If you need one-on-one help with your college, law school, or graduate school application, head over to harvardandhardshipllc.com. And I'll see you all next week. Good night.